Thanks for checking out the I Am More Than podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Wessel, a former Miss Arizona USA, professional model, self-acceptance advocate, hype girl, and founder of More Than Inc. In this podcast, we talk about the things that actually matter, from mental health to health and wellness, body image and confidence, and social issues. We're here to uplift, educate, inspire, and grow together. Each week, we'll feature a unique and incredible woman to share her story of how she's so much more than whatever you may know her as. We'll laugh, cry, and feel inspired in every episode, and trust me, there's no topic off limits. Whether you're commuting, working, or enjoying a glass of wine, we're so honored to have you here, and I'm excited to welcome you to the More Than movement. We're just getting started. All right, y'all, I've been so excited to film this podcast episode because now that I'm on the other end of wedding planning, I feel like I truly got my life back. I got so much wisdom out of the whole process, and I can actually look back at the actual wedding day and wedding weekend and confidently say it was truly everything and more I ever could have imagined. And I can look at it from a completely different perspective than where I was the last time you guys heard from me planning the wedding, going through the whole wedding planning process. So I do want to talk to some of you new brides that are, or not even new brides, newly engaged girls that are going through this process right now, or if you have friends that are going through the process, or even if you just want to know some tea about what was going on behind the scenes when I was wedding planning, this episode is going to be for you. I'm going to first dive into my perspective of wedding day, talk about some of the awesome highlights, and then I'm going to go into the Q&A that I had posted on my Instagram stories. A lot of you guys wrote in questions that I want to get really specific on, and I also want to give you more insight on what was going on behind the scenes that was making me feel this way, because I know for me, when I was wedding planning, the majority of the people that I was following that were also going through the same season of life were solely sharing the crazy highs and only the excitement. And I felt like I was one of the only people that wasn't enjoying it and that something was wrong with that. And that my experience was just so different than other people's. And like I've mentioned before, the more I open up and the more candid I am about my experience, the more I've heard from girlfriends that have gotten married that they felt the exact same way. So I do also want to normalize the wedding planning process not being sunshine and rainbows, and kind of prepare some of you if you're about to be going through this so that you're not so dang hard on yourself. So I'm going to start where we kind of left off with Court on the last episode. If you listen to it, you know that it was chaotic and wonderful, and you got to hear a lot of her perspective. I mentioned in there when we went into wedding weekend, it was a Friday morning that I was getting ready here at the house to then go to the hotel to really start all of the festivities for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I mentioned that I was just so emotionally drained going into the weekend. And I really wish that I wasn't in that headspace, because it took away the excitement of that Friday morning just because I was so exhausted. And as we were driving to the wedding hotel, luckily I had my biggest hype girls. I had my mom and my sister hyping me up. The second I walked into the hotel, I got to see my best friend Dana and bridesmaid. My glam girl Lauren was there. We went up to my suite and just blasted music, drank rosé, and got me glam to the nines. And it totally set the tone for the weekend. So if you are a bride and you're trying to question whether or not you should do glam, if that's something you want to do for your rehearsal dinner, do it. I got so much shade going into it about how extra it was going to be, and that it wasn't necessary and I could get myself ready. And that was just an added expense that I'm so thankful that I took the time to do, mainly because it allowed me to feel like I was being pampered and to feel like a bride, and honestly to feel my best. I can stand behind the fact that I think rehearsal dinner night is the best I've ever looked and will ever look. Well, I can't say that. I'll always try and top it, but I felt fantastic. Rehearsal dinner night. If you haven't seen the fit yet, I wore this awesome 2-piece set from Nadine Merabi Bridal. I wore so many of her bridal pieces throughout the whole season and just loved everything, fit like a glove. And we went down to our rehearsal dinner restaurant, which we ended up choosing a restaurant that was right next to the hotel so everybody could walk. One of the smartest things we could have done, because trying to coordinate, we had 30 people that came to the rehearsal dinner, and trying to coordinate 30 people to a restaurant and then back. And there was a lot of logistical stuff that we decided to just go with a higher end restaurant that was within walking distance so that we wouldn't have to stress so much. And it worked out perfectly because everyone could just walk over at their leisure and get all nice and tipsy and walk right home. And it was fantastic. My now mother-in-law planned the most phenomenal rehearsal dinner and did so many cute and amazing touches throughout the night that were super meaningful to us. For Brendan and myself, it really was the first time that we got to walk into a group of all of our favorite people and feel so celebrated and so loved. And to take it even further, we decided to do all of our speeches that night. So we had all of our parents do a speech, which they were all emotional and wonderful and great. And then Brendan had all of his groomsmen outside of his best man give a speech, which we weren't expecting and didn't know that they would be giving. And they were all just so touching. And it really just set this tone for the amount of love that was in the room and made people feel like they wanted to be there. Everybody connected on a really deep level just right off the bat, which was awesome. So we had amazing food. We ended the night with espresso martinis all around. Then we walked back to the hotel, and we had invited everybody that was attending the wedding to come up to the rooftop of the hotel to have welcome drinks. So people that didn't know each other, they could mingle, they could get to know other guests that were coming in, and also have some time to just connect with Brendan and I and have us just talk and not have it be something short on wedding day. We really got to have intentional time with them and also have a bunch of drinks and just have so much fun. And I'm really, really glad that we did that, because so many of our amazing friends from all different walks of life got to get in one room and all loved each other and were hyping each other up. And it got carried away to the point that my groom and a bunch of my bridesmaids, a bunch of the groomsmen, and basically all of our friends that flew in all went out to Rainey Street, partied until, like 4 a.m, had the time of their life. And I feel like when I was going into a rehearsal dinner the night before, I'd gotten all this advice on don't really drink too much, don't eat too much, go to bed at a very reasonable hour so you wake up feeling your very best. And I think that sounds amazing in theory, but I also went into the night with the mindset of this is the only night that I'm really going to be able to get with all of these people that I love in one room for our rehearsal to celebrate us. Yes, the wedding, we were going to have that as well. But the night before, having that quality time to soak in with everybody, having people give me drinks and eating whatever I wanted and not being so concerned about what time is it, how much sleep do I need to get, really allowed me to just have fun that night. And I'm glad I did. I think I was out till 1 a.m, just on the rooftop, drinking champagne with my mom, my aunt, my best friends, Dana and Elizabeth, and it was awesome. So if you're a bride going into the weekend, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Yes, I'm sure I would have felt phenomenal if I took a melatonin at 10 p.m. and got 8 hours of sleep, but you also have so much adrenaline rushing through your body that I was ready to get up the second my alarm went off. So if you're worried about that, let your mind be at ease. Or if you're somebody that knows that you don't do well if you don't get a solid 8 hours, don't listen to me, but just, you know what's best for you. I feel like that's a theme throughout the entire weekend, and for your weekend too. You know what's best for you, so take other people's opinions with a grain of salt. Okay, so moving on to wedding day. We chose a venue that was about 45 minutes away from the hotel. It was in Texas Hill Country, which is gorgeous rolling hills, a bunch of vineyards, but it's also a bunch of windy roads and just super secluded. So we decided to provide transportation for all of our guests and all of our bridal party just to get out there. So we get out there and I start setting up the bridal suite. And when I tell you the wave of peace that just washed over my body was the most amazing feeling ever. I can't remember another day in my life where I haven't had anxiety or I haven't overthought things or I haven't worried about things. And I'm so thankful that it was on that day. And I really do believe it's because I invested so much in my mental health beforehand. And the other part of that is I did spend so much time making sure that I was so prepared. The details were down. I'd communicated with all of my vendors. My coordinators had my back, that I had done all of the legwork leading up. So when I was there, I just got to be fully present and just have fun. And I spent most of the day dancing to Shania Twain, singing Hilary Duff, rapping to Caitlin, having just a ball. And I'm so glad that that was that day. It's funny because looking back, I'm I wanted to do all these cute photos and TikToks of getting ready on wedding day. And honestly, I didn't even know where my phone was the majority of the time, which was actually really fun. I wish I had more memories that were on video and in photos to be able to send to my girls and recall that day, but also they're so vivid in my mind. So I'm glad that I was as present as I was. I also didn't really drink leading up, which was another thing that I love my champagne. I love my wine. We had Sway Rosé in the bridal suite that was flowing for anybody that wanted it. And I really didn't want to miss anything. I just wanted to be present. And so I just wasn't super interested in drinking or, being attached to my phone or really anything. It was just all for me about being present and spending time with my bridesmaids and my girls and enjoying the moment. When I got into hair and makeup is when it started to hit me a little bit holy shit, I'm about to get married. This is it. This is what I have been preparing for. And instead of really getting overly nervous, I think the people around me could tell, let's just keep the energy high and keep putting on rap music and just having fun. So I'm thankful that my girlfriends around me were able to keep my spirits super high so that I didn't really have time to be stressed out, to be honest. And when I got into my wedding dress and saw myself all glammed up, I just felt like I was ready to rock. And the reason I think I felt that way, and one of the things I'm so thankful that I did, was a bridal shoot beforehand. This is a huge thing in the South, but I feel like when I was in Arizona, really anywhere on the West Coast or on the East Coast, nobody ever talked about doing a bridal shoot. And when I got out here, my wonderful photographer, Vanessa Joy, suggested that we do one. So we went to the venue. I had gotten my hair and makeup trial done that day. I put my dress on and we went to go get bridal portraits in the bridal suite and around the venue. I cannot stress to you enough how valuable that was. When I tried on my dress at my fittings, the dress was perfect. When I walked 5 steps, the dress was perfect. But when I actually was at the venue and walking around, I realized the chest was way too loose. It was falling down in certain areas. I hadn't yet figured out how to walk in the dress. It was just a lot of learning lessons that I'm glad I learned. Only did my bridal shoot, I think 2 weeks before the wedding day. Typically, you do it a lot further in advance, but I'm glad I did that even 2 weeks beforehand because I think it made me feel so much more confident that I knew how I was going to look on wedding day. I knew that the alterations could be done in time, and I didn't have to spend so much time worrying about getting bridal photos because I knew that I had already had that done. And we really did not spend a large amount of time at all doing wedding photos with just me and then me and my bridesmaids. That's one thing I wish I would have allotted more time for. So our wedding coordinators had our schedule down to a T. Like if there was a 5-minute increment when things needed to happen, it was written down and we went according to that plan. And I wish I would have allotted a little bit more time to have those photos with my girlfriends, but things were just moving so quickly. So I do recommend, if it's important to you to have certain photos, whether it's with your bridesmaids or if you're doing a first look or if you're doing photos with your dad or your parents or whatever it looks like, just make sure there's time in your schedule for that. I also am really, really glad that we chose not to do a first look. And there's two sides to this because we went back and forth knowing that we would have been able to get our wedding photos together, done ahead of time, and it would have really cut down on the time that we needed to have photos. So we could have just had more time to go join cocktail hour and be with our guests, which sounded really good. But the only thing I knew going into this wedding process is that I wanted Brendan to see me for the first time and for me to see him for the first time as I'm walking down the aisle. I really felt that strongly in my gut, and I'm so glad I chose to listen to it because when I tell you that moment was euphoric, there's no words that can properly articulate how powerful it was. And for us, I don't think it would have been as powerful if we had already done a first look and photos and stuff together. So when we were getting ready to actually walk down the aisle, we had it so that our processional was very specific on who was walking down, and I'll get into that in a minute. We also had only 4 bridesmaids and 4 groomsmen. So we had them walk down individually instead of paired up, just because we also didn't have a flower girl or a ring bearer. There just wasn't really a long processional. So by the time the doors closed, right after Courtney walked down and got to hug Bren, and I walked out to the Duomo version of Wildest Dreams by Taylor Swift, and it was such a perfect song, and I could envision it so well in my head, and I'm glad it got executed to a T. But right as like the song drops, those doors opened, and I just walked myself right down that aisle and got to make eye contact with not only Brendan, but as I was walking down, seeing our loved ones with tears in their eyes, I felt so thankful. I felt so beautiful. I felt so strong walking down. And I'm really glad that I chose to do it the way that I chose to, because I went to the front of the aisle where my dad was standing. We got to hug each other, and then he walked me the rest of the way to Brendan. And it just was a really powerful moment and worked out perfectly for our relationship and for us. And I think it was really moving for everyone that was in attendance. Our officiant is our pastor, Doug Weckenman. He's the pastor at Red Rocks, Austin, if you're here in Texas. And we were introduced to this church by a girlfriend that I had met out at some social event when I first got to Texas. And it was the first church that we ever attended where it just felt like home. And we really connected with Doug and his beautiful wife, Sam. Asked him to marry us, I think 3 months before we got married. Like, we were very last minute about it because we wanted to find somebody that not only knew us and loved us as a couple, but that we also saw being involved in our lives as a married couple. And he just absolutely knocked it out of the park. It was such a touching and beautiful ceremony. I love that Brendan cried like a baby as I was walking down throughout the ceremony. He was so present and so raw and real, and I loved that. And we did vows, our personal written vows to each other, which were really touching and moving and just powerful. That's the only word that really comes to mind when describing the ceremony itself. There was so much intentionality that went into it, and I feel like it just really paid off. So it was about 30 minutes long, if that. We were introduced as husband and wife and went off to go get our photos taken and just being together. And my heart just was so full. Once we did all of our photos, we wanted to join cocktail hour, but photos were taking a little bit longer than we had allotted in that schedule. So we decided to cut cocktail hour just a little bit short so we could do our grand entrance and just spend more time with our guests during the reception. So we decided to do a grand entrance. It was very dramatic, just like we are, and it was wonderful. Our entertainment was a drummer and a DJ. So it was a really cool combination of live music that Brendan really wanted and a DJ, which I really wanted. So we had Suit and Tie by Justin Timberlake start playing. If you haven't heard the song, highly recommend it. And it just got louder and louder and louder. And then our bridal party came in through the main doors. They were hyped up. They were going through all the different tables, getting everybody else hyped up. And then as the chorus drops, Bren and I were introduced, and we walked down the staircase at Ma Maison, got to see all our guests, started getting them hyped up as we're going to the dance floor, and our DJ invited all the guests to get on the dance floor for a dance with us, and it was another high energy song. We were able to just really start the night off right. I think it set the tone. People were excited to be there. Everyone's energy was high. I think it was just different, something that a lot of people haven't seen at weddings. And I really do think it set the tone for what the rest of the night was going to be like. So we did our little welcome address. And then as everybody was eating, we went around, got to say hi to people. We took some photos with people. And once people were getting to the point where they were finishing up their dinner, we only did 2 speeches. And we had my sister, Courtney, did her maid of honor speech, which was unbelievably moving and amazing. And then we had Brendan's best man, Cole, do a speech, which was hilarious and also so moving and amazing. Then we went into our first dance. I had my father-daughter dance, his mother-son dance, and then the party got started, and it did not stop. When I tell you, I jumped up and down for, I think we got everybody on the dance floor at 7:30-ish, and our send-off was 11. We were on the dance floor jumping the entire time, and it was so much fun. The majority of our guests were also all on the dance floor. Like, it was packed the whole time. And part of that, I think, is our entertainment. He chose amazing music. We had one slow song the entire evening. Everything else was either throwbacks or stuff you could dance to, stuff you could sing to. Like, people were just loving it. And I was in for the surprise of my life when the drummer handed over the drumsticks to Brendan. Mind you, I know that Brendan was a drummer, quote unquote, when he was a kid, like used to like hit on those orange buckets and had some rhythm, then had a drum set at one point, was in band at some point, but in the 8 years that I've known him, I've never seen him play the drums. So when he got up there, it was like, oh God, just like, I hope this goes amazing. Like, let's do a few like beats with it and then come back on the dance floor. My mind was blown that I just married a hot ass drummer. Like, he went from a scale to like a 10 to like a 20. It was so much fun watching him on there. He is an unbelievable drummer. Everyone was just as surprised as I was. He did, I think, like 3 or 4 different songs, which just added another element of excitement for everybody and entertainment for everybody. So that was definitely one of the highlights of the night. And then something else that we did while everyone was getting ready for the send-off with sparklers outside, Brendan and I did a last dance with just the two of us. We danced to Thank God by Kane Brown and his beautiful wife. And the lyrics is what really resonated with me. But having that moment of just him and I to be able to sing the song to each other, to dance, to laugh, to cry, to just be really present, really felt like it brought the night full circle. And it was just a really special moment that just the two of us had that I'm really glad that we did. So if you are considering having a last dance, I highly, highly recommend it. We went through the sparklers, got into our getaway car. It's another thing I'm glad I did was get a getaway car just for the two of us because it allowed us to take a beat, to talk to each other, to recap what the heck just happened, and to just have a moment to take a deep breath with my new husband and feel so much relief that we just had the best night of our lives. We got back to the hotel. I ran up to quickly try and brush my hair. I was a sweaty mess. My makeup was all over the place, and regroup because then we went down to the lobby to hang out with any of the guests that were still awake. We had booze there until 2 a.m. One of Brendan's groomsmen went and got $200 worth of McDonald's for everybody, which was awesome. I've never been so hyped to see a spicy McChicken sandwich. And we went to bed. I don't think I slept for 5 minutes because I was just on such an adrenaline high, and we were recapping the whole night and just was so excited to see everybody again the next morning. We got up, we went down to have coffee from 9 to noon with anybody that was there, to hang out, just to have a relaxing morning. And then we had any of the guests that were still in town come back to our house for the full afternoon. People were at our house until 11 p.m. And then Bren and I left for a flight to Europe at noon the following day. Don't know if I recommend going on your honeymoon immediately after. I wish we would have done a 1-day buffer so we could have really packed and caught up on sleep a little bit, but we were just go, 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 go. And I was so excited when we got on the plane because it was a 14-hour flight, I think. I was like, I'm just going to sleep and it's going to be amazing. Again, didn't even sleep for a minute. Was just so excited, was high off energy from the wedding and so excited to see Europe for the first time. And then we went into the most incredible 2 weeks on our honeymoon. It was amazing. The whole thing felt like such a dream and just a fairy tale. It was more than I ever could have asked for. And I say that without negating the fact that leading up to it was an absolute nightmare. And I'm candid to say that because if you're in a position right now where you are planning a wedding and you feel overwhelmed and you're drained and you're wondering if this is even worth it, I want to encourage you because I felt the way that you feel. And now being on the other side of the wedding, I'm thankful that we did it. I'm thankful we chose to have our wedding. And I'm very happy that I don't have to plan it again. But I'm so glad that I did spend so much time and energy into the details leading up to the big day because the day went off without a hitch. So I really want to dive in now to your specific questions now that you got a full recap from my perspective, give you my unfiltered and very raw and real opinion. So let's do the damn thing. We'll start easier and then eventually get a little bit more intense and a little more juicy. So one of the main questions was, how did you pick your vendors? I had mentioned in the last episode that I had found our wedding venue online. I booked it without ever seeing it in person. I had been connected with a couple different wedding coordinators, had talked with them, told them about the style I was envisioning, and chose the Simply XO girls here in Austin. And I mean it when I say they are the only thing that was worth every single penny we paid. Their time and attention to detail and their efficiency and everything that they did blew my mind. It takes a very special person to be able to handle multiple brides, all the different details and the vendors and the contracts and the details. It's just, I had no idea how in over my head I would feel. And I can't imagine doing it without Simply XO. So if you have the ability to hire them in Austin, highly recommend it. But I also will say when it comes to picking your vendors, anytime after the pandemic, really, pricing of vendors skyrocketed and the ability to book them far in advance got more and more limited. Like they're booking up so quickly that I would encourage, if you are newly engaged or you're looking through the process, first find your venue and a date that's far enough out. I get there's a lot of people that like quick engagements. We had an almost 2-year engagement and it was perfect for us. So you do you, but find a venue that fits with your time frame. Find wedding coordinators or day of coordinators or whatever is in your budget and have them look through your contract with the venue before you sign. There's a lot of stipulations in different venues about specific vendors that they will work with and will only allow you to work with them. So you need to make sure that those vendors are also within your price point so that you don't just feel like you signed a contract and now you have to completely break the bank because these vendors are out of your price range and you didn't know that prior. So really vet your contracts, read your contracts, and if you do have a coordinator of some sort, have them read through it. If you're choosing to be an absolute badass and planning every detail of your own wedding, amazing. Have other people look at your contracts as well, just to make sure there's nothing that you're skipping over because they hold you to it. Another part I really want to say on when you're picking your vendors, before you go down that rabbit hole, make sure that you and your fiance sit down and come up with a very realistic budget. And I would go as far as to say not only your overall budget, but your budget for each category, how much you want to spend. Like how much do we want to spend on the venue, photographer, videographer, florist, caterer, like really break that down and also research what average prices are like in your area, because I will say I was blown away by how expensive weddings are. That may sound naive of me to say, but I had no idea when we were going into this process that it was going to be such a astronomical financial commitment. And I think it's easy to think like, yeah, weddings are expensive, but whatever. If you're actually paying for your wedding, or if you haven't yet had that conversation with your parents about if they're contributing or what that looks like, don't assume anything. Talk about it, get a really clear idea of what you're financially comfortable with, and then start the process of securing your vendors, looking into your vendors. It will save you so much back and forth. It will save you a lot of heartache. The next question was, how many guests did you have coming? And another question is also asking about how we narrow down our guest list. So I'm going to answer all of that really in one long-winded answer. So when it came to our guest list, Brendan and I were on the same page that if you're not someone who's actively involved in both of our lives, you probably weren't getting an invitation to the wedding. Since we've been together for so long, if either of us have not met that person, they most likely weren't getting an invitation to the wedding. For example, friends from back in our hometowns that we haven't talked to since we graduated high school in 2011 probably weren't getting a wedding invitation if they weren't involved, close friends, and if I had not met them and vice versa. So that made it pretty easy to determine the beginning of our guest list. We also applied that same rule of thumb to family. It was really important to us that we didn't extend the invitation to anybody hoping that they would say no. In my mind, that is very counterproductive, and it's also not genuine. So we really checked ourselves throughout the whole process that it's like, if we're doing this just to appease somebody, that doesn't feel right, and we chose not to do it that way. It wasn't always met with respect as we thought, or not everybody agreed with our decision, and that's okay. That's another thing that we learned throughout the process, that not everybody's going to agree with the way that you and your fiance decide to do things, and that's okay. Know that ahead of time so that you're not shocked. Because I think I was just so shocked anytime that somebody was upset with me that I just needed to kind of come around to the fact that if it's something that was important to us, we held on to that and didn't really give in to the idea of making exceptions if it's not something that we actually wanted. So when it came to our guest list, I believe we invited around 170 people. And our coordinators had told us in the beginning, you should account for about 30% of people not being able to come. And since we were so selective with our guest list, we're like, well, I feel like everybody on this list is going to come. I don't know why they wouldn't, And when you really think about it, it's a big commitment to go to somebody's wedding, especially if it's in a different state and you pay for flights and hotels and transportation and outfits to wear and wedding gifts. Like, it's a whole commitment. So we knew that there was a chance that there would be a handful of people that couldn't come. And it's funny because leading up to the wedding, it was like exactly 30% of people that were unable to make it. And we ended up having 100 people total, including Brendan and I. And it was absolutely perfect. We both knew every single person in the room. Those people are involved in our lives. There was no awkward small talk. It was just a room filled with people that we really, really wanted to be there. And I'm beyond thankful that we did that. Another question on here is, how did you set boundaries and not feel like a bitch? And I really respect this question because it was so difficult for me. And it's an ongoing thing for me anytime I set boundaries, because I'm such a natural people pleaser and I hate hurting other people's feelings or upsetting anybody. And I really had to be intentional throughout this wedding planning process that I needed to set strict boundaries around what we wanted, around making sure it was a day that reflected us, and trying to respectfully drown the outside noise, which was difficult to do. And I feel like a lot of the times that I did draw a boundary and it was crossed, I would feel hurt right away, but then it would almost get to anger. And then it got to a point where I had to make a decision to just not invest time and energy into that. So when you're struggling with how you want to create boundaries, obviously there's some that are going to be more difficult than others, but I would just make sure you're on the same page with your fiance. You guys both want the same things. And if it's important to you, draw a boundary there that nobody can cross, whether that's friends, whether that's family, whether that's vendors, whatever that can be, just stick to it. One of the most important things to remember is that ultimately your wedding day is about you and your now husband, wife, and creating a unit together. That's a significant moment that you guys are always going to look back to and talk about your wedding day. Make sure that when you remember it and talk about it, it's positive stuff because it's what you guys wanted, not because you made all these compromises for other people so that you wouldn't hurt their feelings, and ultimately you guys suffered for it. So Be really protective of your relationship, and I promise you it will pay off. Next question is, did you have any major diet or exercise changes leading up to the wedding? I feel so much pressure to lose weight. This is a loaded question, but I will do my best to talk you through my logic on this. So I had done a podcast episode, I think I titled it More Than a Dress, and it was really talking about the last time I put so much emphasis on a dress was when I competed at Miss USA. I dieted and exercised and obsessed over losing weight, trying to make my body look perfect to fit into a dress. And I've done a lot of work on myself over these last, 10 years. That's crazy. Almost 10 years. So when I started looking for a dress and envisioning myself as a bride, it was hard for me to not fall back into that trap. And I had to be so intentional every step of the way of I'm not doing some drastic transformation. I'm not doing a crash diet. I need to find exercise that feels good, that makes me feel strong and helps me to feel confident. But if I'm going into it with the mentality of I need to lose weight so that I can look beautiful and my best on my wedding day, that felt really toxic to me. So that doesn't mean that there weren't many times where I struggled with it. Like wedding dress shopping, I remember a handful of dresses where I'd put on and I'd be like, oh, I have a belly pooch here. My arms don't look good here. And a lot of the time it was my own internal dialogue saying stuff. And the few times I did say it out loud, and my mom, because that's who I went dress shopping with the majority of the time, my mom would hear, she'd be like, what? No, like that's not what this is about. And she'd really bring me back down and bring me back to my body. And on days where I felt insecure in my body, those were the days where I was really intentional about giving myself grace, about looking at myself in the mirror and actually talking to myself, which again, I know sounds crazy, but if you're thinking things about yourself that you would never say to somebody that you love, then why would you think it about yourself? And that's a trick that I've really learned throughout this last couple years. I learned through therapy, where when you start treating yourself with love and respect, you operate differently. I put an emphasis on eating whole and nutritious foods because I wanted to feel good. I would get up, do my morning routine, spend time journaling, doing my devotionals, and then go and move my body because it was a way to start the day and move my body in a way that felt good so that when I was done with exercise, I didn't feel depleted, but instead I felt energized and I felt strong. A big part of that for me was weightlifting, surprisingly, because I've really shied away from that for a long time, especially since the fitness competition, that I've put so much time and attention into cardio and Pilates and yoga. And throughout COVID, it was a lot of Peloton and high intensity stuff. And it wasn't just like slow controlled movements, actually lifting weight and trying to get stronger. And I heard this incredible woman that was on a TSC podcast. Her name is Mari, and she started this thing called the Slay app. I downloaded it and started doing some of her workouts, and it made me fall back in love with weightlifting. It was also really helpful for me to have a plan when I was going to the gym. I think it's easy to just be like, well, I'm going to do arms today. And then like whatever machine is available, you do 3 sets of whatever machine you're on and then like bounce around and you wonder like, did I just get an effective workout? Whereas when I had a plan to follow, I knew what I was doing. I would get in, get out. It was an intense workout, but I could track the fact that I was getting stronger. I noticed physical changes in my body when I stopped obsessing so much about this high intensity stuff. So that was really helpful for me. I also was conscious about just moving my body as much as I could. I tried to get about 10,000 steps a day at a minimum. I love going outside and actually taking my hot girl walks and listening to a podcast and feeling like I'm learning and doing something. It was a great excuse for me to just get out, get my body moving. So that was a really good goal for me. Those are the things that I chose to focus on more than anything else, where I did not say like, I need to lose weight, or I'm going to restrict myself eating, or I'm going to follow a new diet plan. None of that. And that was really intentional. I'm thankful that I did that. I genuinely felt so beautiful and comfortable in my own skin on my wedding day. And one of my girlfriends that has known me for many, many years, watched me through the whole fitness competition, through pageantry, had made a drunk comment just saying like, have you just gone back to just eating like tilapia and rice cakes because you look amazing? And it was one of those moments that really stuck with me, because it was like, no, I didn't do that. Like, I didn't fall into any of my toxic patterns. I didn't restrict myself. I didn't go back into like a crazy tailspin trying to be smaller so that I would be more beautiful. I felt really, really proud that I didn't do any of that and still looked beautiful and amazing. And I truly believe that the reason that I looked beautiful and amazing is because I felt it. And I think any time that you carry yourself with confidence, that radiates. So that does not matter what size you are. I think that's really important for not only brides to know, but just women to know in general, that so often we think that if we make ourselves smaller, we will be more beautiful. And it's mind-boggling to me, because that confidence piece that you think you're going to gain if you're smaller, that confidence is in you no matter what size you're at. It's just how you choose to carry yourself. So it's really important that you start diving into trying to be the best version of yourself, but also learning to love yourself at every stage, because then that confidence is going to stick with you no matter what season of life you're in. Okay, one of these juicy questions is, my fiance and I both have divorced parents who don't necessarily get along. How did you make each of them feel special wedding planning and on wedding day? This is another loaded question, because I've shared we also have divorced parents. I think that's a complexity that, again, I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about, being the byproduct of divorce. In my circumstance, my parents divorced when I was in my 20s. So it's a little more fresh for me, whereas Brendan's parents divorced when he was a child. So we have such different lenses of what it feels like to have two very separate parents. We wanted to make each one of them feel valued and included and loved and respected throughout the process. And I think that's an element that couples that have married parents on both sides just don't have to deal with. So one, I'm sorry that you're also navigating that, because it is difficult. What we did throughout the process in the beginning was talk to each one of those parents and try to make them feel as involved in the wedding planning process as they wanted to be. In our experience, it was more of like the moms that wanted to be more hands-on and know details and be involved in decision making. And dad's more like, when you make decisions, like, just let me know. And if you need anything, let me know. We were kind of able to navigate the wedding planning process, just being communicative with all of the parents about where we were at and when big decisions were made. And when wedding day got closer, we chose to do assigned seating and name cards for the ceremony so that the parents were able to be separated while still being respected in the first row, having family trickled in there, just taking away any of the extra stress or anxiety that could come not only on our part, but also on their part. So we tried to think about those details ahead of time. We did the same thing with the reception, really thinking through where everybody wanted to sit, make sure they were with friends and family to feel supported and loved. Same thing during all of the photos. My photographer and her assistant had reached out to do like a photo list beforehand of who we wanted to be in photos, what that looked like. So she was just able to shout out like names with us during that session of when we were taking photos. So people were able to just come up, get photos. Now, we know that each family and their friends and family members on that side all have the photos that they're wanting. So again, that was another thing just out of respect that I wanted to make sure that nobody felt left out. We also were intentional about how the processional worked and make sure that they were able to walk down with either significant others or family and really just have that moment and feel honored. Lastly, something that we did was include all of the parents in speeches on the rehearsal dinner night. So, like I said, my beautiful mother-in-law took initiative to make sure that all of the parents had the opportunity to speak at the rehearsal dinner, since there weren't going to be any parent speeches at the wedding. And I think that just gave everyone an opportunity that they're all speaking at the same time. Nobody gets one day over the other. And for us, I think that that just worked. So whether that's traditional or untraditional, if that works for your circumstance, take it and run with it. And also know that at the end of the day, you need to focus more on making sure that your day is magical for you and really take other people's emotions into account, but also don't kill yourself over it. That I feel like I stressed a little bit too much because I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. When hindsight looking back, I really didn't need to do that, because at the end of the day, everybody's an adult. They'll figure it out for themselves. And everyone that's there is there to show up and celebrate you and your significant other and shower you guys in love. So I think it's easier to stress out about it during the buildup than you actually need to. Next question was best things that we did. There's a couple things really come to mind right away. The first thing was that we did an adult-only wedding. I am so beyond thankful that we chose to do this. Not because I don't love every single kid that comes with the amazing people that were at our wedding, but because we really wanted all of the adults, all of the parents to have a night off to fully enjoy themselves. We provided transportation to the venue, so getting out there, it was a trek. And if your kid needs to go home, that's another thing we just really couldn't accommodate. So having them out there, knowing that their kids were taken care of somewhere else and they could eat their hearts out, drink their hearts out, dance, party, have a great time. We didn't need to worry about the music we were playing. I think we just really were able to capture a party, which is exactly what we were trying to do, but we also were able to see everybody at their best when they weren't anxious, they weren't stressed out, they weren't worried about where their kids were. They were able to just be present and enjoy. So I'm really thankful that we chose to do an adult-only wedding. I touched on the private last dance. I'm really thankful that we did that. I'm glad we got everyone on the dance floor right away. Hiring a videographer was huge. I know that pretty much everybody's doing that now. I know it wasn't as big a couple years ago, but having a videographer there is the only way that you're going to be able to relive your magical day outside of your memories and other people's videos and photos. Our videographer did such a beautiful job at capturing the day, and I'm so thankful that we're able to have that. We get to hear our vows, we get to see the people that were there, we get to have that flood of emotions come back every time we watch it. And I'm excited to share that with friends, with family, with our kids someday. I think it's just really special. So I highly recommend fitting that into your budget. It is worth every penny. Speaking of budget, I do want to touch on what we did for gifts too, for not only our parents, but also our bridal parties, because that's another thing that we spent a lot of time and allocated quite a bit of budget for, and I'm glad that we did. So when it came to our parents, for both of our moms, we got them a really nice bottle of Versace perfume. I got my mom a handkerchief that was custom for her on Etsy so that she can kind of always have that as a keepsake. And then I wrote her a letter and Brendan wrote her a letter, and vice versa for my mother-in-law. And I was able to give them that on wedding morning, which was just a really special and really powerful memory that I'm thankful that we did. And we also chose to pay for their hair and makeup, so they just didn't have to worry about it, and they got to feel as beautiful as ever on that day and just be pampered. I also chose to do that for all of my bridesmaids as well. I paid for their hair, their makeup, a beautiful blush robe that I got on Amazon, and these gorgeous drop-down pearl earrings. I'm thankful that I did that because it felt like it was a way that I could give back, knowing that when you ask people to be in your bridal party, you're asking them to make financial commitments of a bachelorette party if they can, a bridal shower if they can, showing up for you wedding weekend, buying a dress, shoes. There's so many other costs that come with a wedding that it was a small way to be able to just alleviate that from them and just say, thank you. I really appreciate having you here. I understand that not everybody can do that in their budget, but I also think that's the power of having a small bridal party, is that I only had 4 girls and they were my 4 best friends. It made it so that I felt like I could allocate a little bit more to make sure that they felt pampered and beautiful and wonderful on wedding day. Brendan, for his groomsmen, got each of them a nice golf bag from TravisMathew, cufflinks, as well as just some personal gifts for each person that he thought fit them. Then for our dads, we gave them a TravisMathew polo, a golf bag, cologne, and again, we did letters. I did a letter to my dad, so did Brendan, and vice versa. I know those gifts were super meaningful, and if you're looking for ideas on what to gift your parents or your bridal party, I hope you can take these and run with it. The last question that I'm going to cover is, how did you ease your anxiety on wedding day? If I could tell you the exact recipe on how I was as chill as I was, I would, but I really can only credit it to the amount of emphasis I put on mental health leading up. That for me, starting a morning routine, journaling, having the first 30 minutes to an hour of my day dedicated to like focusing on myself, investing in myself, and setting the tone for my day in that way became such a habit. When I did that wedding morning, it really brought me a lot of peace. I do have to bring it back to when it comes to easing my anxiety and really focusing on my mental health. There's a really large faith component there for me, really investing in my faith, really just going down to the fact that like I will control what I can control and the rest is completely up to God. That's what I believe in. And I can only attribute that supernatural sense of peace to something far beyond me. I don't know if that helps you if you don't have faith, but I highly encourage you to just stick to morning routines, build up confidence with yourself. If you're in therapy, continue going to therapy. If you're not, talk to trusted people around you about everything you're going through leading up to the wedding, what you're worried about on the actual wedding day. Just verbalize and vocalize this to everybody around you so that the people that love you, that are surrounding you that day, know how to show up for you and know how to support you, because that just adds another element of just ease into the entire equation. I feel really lucky. I just had such a strong, amazing support system around me. And I think if you feel pressure to add additional people to the mix because you want a certain number of bridesmaids, or because you feel guilty you were in somebody else's wedding, so now they have to be in your wedding, or you don't want to leave anybody out, or whatever your reasoning is. I've heard so much of it, and I also get it because I remember being in college and when we first started dating, and even when we first got engaged, thinking like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how many bridesmaids I should have, like how far should I let this circle go to? I only have a couple close friends, but is it weird if I only have like my core people there? And to be completely honest, there's 2 of my other best friends that I really feel like I could have included and had 6. But having 4 people that have known me basically my whole life be there for me and support me on that day just put me at ease, and I didn't have to worry about them or anything extra going on, which was really beneficial. So I think just be so intentional with who you're choosing to surround yourself with, because it absolutely matters. Going into wedding day, just remember that you have spent so much time and energy and money into this day. And once you've finally gotten there, you've done all that you can do. There's no stress or anxiety that's going to affect you on that day that's actually going to make a positive difference. So however you can, just be present. If that for you is putting away your phone like it was for me, I highly encourage you to do that. And just remember that this day, like any other day, will pass, and it's up to you to just make the absolute most of it. So I think mindset is everything, applies to so much more, again, than just wedding planning. But I really wanted to be able to just dive in and give you guys my viewpoint on the wedding planning process. I intend to only be a bride one time in my life, and I also want to use any of the lessons that I learned or the wisdom that I gained to be able to help other women that are going through that process, and just remind you that just because your process may not look like somebody else's doesn't make it any less significant or special. I highly encourage you to get rid of comparison as soon as you can, because it can only make a negative impact on your day. I touched on this on the last episode, but I think it's so easy to obsess over your wedding looking a certain way, and you want it to be Pinterest worthy, and you see what these other girls are doing, and again, you're only seeing a highlight reel in their most curated photos of what I'm sure is a magical day for everybody. But don't get stuck in a trap of comparing your wedding planning process to somebody else's. Don't get stuck in the trap of comparing your relationship to other people's. Invest so much more in the person you're about to marry, in yourself, in your relationship, and mentally preparing for what marriage actually is, instead of obsessing over the way it's going to look. It's been really fun showcasing this chapter of my life with you guys. 2022 has been an absolute whirlwind, but I'm so happy to be going into 2023 fully focused on growing More Than. We have so many exciting things coming up, amazing sponsors. Season 4 of the podcast is going to be dropping, and a lot of really exciting things in store. So I can't thank you guys enough for continuing to support not only More Than, but for supporting me and for helping me through navigating this whole chapter of being a business owner and a fiance and a millennial woman that has no idea what the hell I'm doing. So thank you for supporting me. I'm really excited to see what we can do in 2023. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any other questions, DM me on Instagram. I will answer them individually so that we can really take wedding year and appreciate it, but put it behind us, and we are on to bigger and better things. If you're loving the I Am More Than podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us so much. And if you haven't already, follow us on Insta at More Than Inc. for all things inspo, More Than merch, and soon we'll be posting info about our in-person meetups. We're so thankful to have you part of this community and are always here to remind you that you are so much more than.